I'm going to introduce our guest presenter today. We have Michael Bunsen joining us. He is a research software engineer who builds systems to facilitate biodiversity monitoring and conservation. Born and raised in the Willamette Valley, Michael works remotely with Montreal Insectarium and Mila AI Research Institute in Canada, where he contributes to the citizen science platform eButterfly and machine-assisted moth identification. When not on the computer, Michael keeps a net in hand and is eager to create more public awareness of butterflies and moths. So help me welcome Michael.
Great, great. I want to start with this quote by the author Vladimir Nabokov. He says, "I'm astonished how little the ordinary person notices butterflies." And I'm not the first person to use this quote. I think it's pretty helpful to describe the situation we are in now. I go out with people and people don't notice butterflies. They're maybe a little smaller than they think, maybe a little dimmer than they think, maybe a little faster than they know. So I'm hoping by the end of this presentation, you are able to notice butterflies a bit more, especially in the situation we are in right now, with a lot of loss of habitat and pesticide use. Um, uh, we are seeing study after study showing a decline in species of butterfly or numbers of butterflies. So one of the best things we can do is bring our attention to them. So by noticing them, you're bringing your attention, and that's where our effort goes. A bit about myself, I'm primarily a software engineer, and I was really fortunate to get a job in moth and butterfly research some years ago, and uh, I caught the bug, and I still primarily in monitoring them from software and technology, but then I like to get outside whenever I can. And most common comments I get when I'm showing people butterflies is, "That's a butterfly," and it's true. Many maybe are dimmer, duller than you see in popular culture and images. These are all butterflies you're seeing on the screen now. You're seeing the dorsal view of all the adult flying butterflies here, which means that's the outside view. If you think of a dolphin, they have a dorsal fin on their back. Well, that's like the back of a butterfly. And often that's used for camouflage. And camouflage means it wants to blend in with grasses, dead leaves, whatever it might be. Especially as a caterpillar. The caterpillar right in the middle in the top there, that is the Lorquin's admiral, which you will see in Marion County. And it is disguising itself as that's bird poop. And that's how it's preventing being eaten. So, but it will turn into a magnificent butterfly. Here's a little quiz for yourself you can do in your head, and then I'll go through them. But out of these photos, what do you think which are a butterfly and which are a moth? Starting at on the far left, that's definitely a butterfly. But it's a picture taking at night, so there's a dark background. This was a sleeping butterfly. Butterflies, they sleep under leaves or in hidden places. We had a UV light trap set up, and we might have woken up this butterfly and disturbed it in its sleep, but it's most certainly a butterfly. These are some really cool moths called the elegant sheep moth. I saw plenty of these last summer in Oregon and Washington. Amazingly colorful day-flying moth, very large and floppy and cool to watch. Number C, one of my favorite little butterflies, the gray hair streak. This is one you can see in your garden typically. It is gray or blue on top, but it has these really cool orange eye spots, which are a decoy for birds, and hoping that birds will go for that its hind wing instead of its actual head. D, this green page moth, that's a moth. It occurs in the tropics. You can see how colorful moths can be. And then E is a little special addition here. That is, believe it or not, a moth. I just saw this. I took this picture last week in Panama, in Western Panama. I was fortunate to go on a research trip there, and I saw a lot of these wasp mimics. These are butterflies, sorry, moths, Lepidoptera, that are mimicking moths, mimicking wasps um, as their defense mechanism. So, if that confused you, what is a butterfly? There's some common clues you'll read about, like clubs on the antenna, which are a good, really good sign. Um, Butterflies have little thin antenna and then clubs at the end, and moths can have all sorts of antenna, but there are exceptions. Um, Moths can fly during the day. A lot of cool day-flying moths. Both can be floppy and flying. There is one thing that is pretty consistent, and that's this amazing organ called the frenulum. And it's it's a mechanical latch that between the front wing and the back wing keeps the wings flying together in moths. You can see in the top right, there's a wire-like shape going horizontally. That's a frenulum. And then there's a vertical um, piece, a bristly piece that is catching the frenulum, and that's locking them together. Butterflies do not have this except for the one butterfly you are looking at. This is an Australian skipper that has a frenulum. So always an exception. This might be why butterflies, I think, can land so gracefully, like a ninja on underneath a leaf or on the side of a tree trunk, where moths kind of tend to bump into things. I don't know. That's one theory I have not proven, but you can look out for yourself. Butterflies can pretty much be considered a subset of moths. They're all under the order called Lepidoptera. Um, and butterflies are a superfamily under Lepidoptera. There are other superfamilies under Lepidoptera that are all what we consider moths. Going deeper in that taxonomic tree, a lot of insects, there are a lot of species, but butterflies, it's not too bad. We only have 7 families, and the families are fairly recognizable by most people with your own eye in the field. So that's a great place to start, is identifying butterflies to the family level. Leps, in the word Lepidoptera I mentioned, is, refers to these scales. That's one thing that makes Lepidoptera special from other insects, is they have these scales, tiny little scales that give them their color. Um, they're covering almost all parts of their body, the wing and the antenna and the head. Um, and contrary to popular belief, butterflies do not disintegrate when you touch them. They're amazingly sturdy. And you'll see this if you get the opportunity to catch one and have it in your hand. They're very robust. They do lose scales throughout their lifetime. Butterflies don't get bigger. They go through full metamorphosis, so that when they hatch out of their chrysalis, they come um, full size, and if anything, they get a little smaller because they'll get bites taken out of them by birds or thorns. They'll get caught in a spider's web, and they can escape sometimes because of the scales. Releasing the scales come off, and they'll eventually start to look quite worn. Both these butterflies were flying when I saw them, so they're still going. As long as they have that forward edge, that leading edge, they can fly, and it's a strong, strong edge. Here's a picture just to give you some relief. It's that same checker spot species, but on the same trail, but fully intact. Maybe getting midlife checker spot here. I think one of the things that was a surprise to me when I first started looking at photos of butterflies on the internet and in guidebooks versus reality is that in guidebooks they're nice and close up photos with a lot of detail and a lot of color. However, when you see them in the field, they're going to look more something like this. Look at that. Look at the white arrow pointing to that small white patch in the bottom center of this photo. That's the same butterfly that you see in the inset image in the upper right, this orange sulfur. And typically, what you're going to be looking for is not something that's looks like the image in the guidebook, but you're going to be looking for any motion at all. When you step out of a woods into a clearing and it's sunny, then you've just crossed an edge and edges are generally great habitat. And now the sun is coming into this open field, um, and look for anything crossing the trail, something landing on a branch. It might look like a gnat to you. It might look like a fly. Uh, um, Most of us aren't used to looking for small moving things, or we're actually trained to ignore those small things and think they're annoying. But there's a good chance it is a butterfly you were looking for. Here's another example, the beautiful morning cloak. Um, these pictures are taken in early spring because this butterfly actually spends the whole winter as an adult butterfly with the wings spread, and it'll come out on sunny days um, in the late winter or early spring. Here's what you might see in the field is just a little curved triangle that's dark with a white edge on a branch. And but if you know, then that might be a morning cloak butterfly, which is what you see in the inset picture here, with might even have blue spots and a cream colored edge when you look up close. So some of the butterflies you might see in Marion County, and I think you absolutely will see, are right here. This is uh, a lineup of 10 butterflies. There's a view actually from the database and website called iNaturalist, which shows where people can post observations. And these are the most observed butterflies as of today in Marion County. The top two, um, you may see the most of any of them. The Western tiger swallowtail, an amazing butterfly. Some people call it a monarch because it's big, but that is our local tiger swallowtail. It doesn't migrate, and actually most butterflies don't. These are here all year round in Oregon, doing something somewhere. They're hiding in rocks, hiding in tree cavities, maybe underneath your porch, as chrysalis or an egg or an adult. Um, but that's, I think, really cool that butterflies are here all the time. But right now in June, you're going to see these tiger swallowtails emerging as adults and flying around. The one you're probably going to see more than any other, and you might not even know it's a butterfly, is number two, the cabbage white. And we're going to talk a lot about this butterfly today. Oh, here's the other note I put in the guidebooks. It can be misleading that everything is the same size, but really, the swallowtail can have a wingspan of over 3 inches, and then in the bottom left, you can see the hair streak is just 1 inch. But the way that the photos are cropped might not tell you that. As we get into names, don't let it discourage you, especially the scientific names. They are extremely helpful for communicating with each other, but don't get stuck on them. I encourage everyone to make up your own names. I make up my own names. When I'm on the trail, I want to count and record what I see, but I often don't know the species name yet. So I'm going to write down floppy butterfly with an orange spot, floppy orange. And then I say I have 5 of those. Oh, I got another 5. And keeping track of those identifiable groups, however you can, is helpful. And maybe noting their behavior in the names you make up. Even the scientific names are changing, so it can be confusing. Some guidebooks are saying have a different scientific name than what iNaturalist uses or different websites use. Since there's been a lot of genetic analysis of butterflies in the last 10 years, we're realizing some things are maybe the same species or a different genus altogether. So one way to start identifying things is to use some bigger groups so rather than identifying butterflies to the species level, you can identify them to the genus or higher. And these are some of the visually identifiable groups that you can see in the field without knowing much at all. If it's a big orange butterfly, not yellow like the swallowtail we saw, but a little smaller and orange, there's a good chance it's a fritillary, especially if you're more towards the mountains. We have some other orange butterflies as well, but that's one group. It's like medium-sized orange butterflies um, coming out in the summer. There are the blues. The blue butterflies are hard to identify. They can look very similar until you get to know them well. On the upper right, you can see often this is what your cell phone photo is going to look like. It's just a little blue blurry butterfly, but at least you can identify it to some level. They do fall into this subfamily, and you can put them on eButterfly or iNaturalist and label them as with that subfamily. I hope this map looks a little familiar. This is the Marion County. Um, and these are all observations that have been submitted to iNaturalist of a butterfly in Marion County since 2016. 628 by 300 observers. I hope you are up for the challenge to increase these numbers. I think you can. You can see there are millions of observations in iNaturalist, and even though butterflies make appearances in a lot of advertisements and headings, they don't end up. I mean, a lot of people aren't noticing them and are not recording them. Here's a little closer map. You can see some of the spots in Marion County to look for butterflies. Um, you know, around the Salem area, you know, look for big parks. The Minto Brown Park, such a cool place. Definitely butterfly sightings there. You're going to need some bigger spaces generally that are not manicured, have space, have some complexity. That's in the urban areas. But then you do have some amazing areas moving east. If you want to see some other species like the checker spots, the fritillaries, you're going to probably move more into the Cascade Mountains. All right, let's talk a bit more about this guy, this cabbage white butterfly. Most people, I won't say most, a lot of people call this the cabbage moth, but it is in fact a butterfly. And it is not only a butterfly, it's one of the most butterfly-like species that there is, I think. It's got round wings and it's floppy and I think it's quite lovely. It's absolutely an introduced species. However, it's one of the only species that you can see on a regular basis in abundance, especially in the city. So you can catch it, you can observe patterns of its behavior, you can see differences between individuals. But yeah, here's some variations of the cabbage whites. You might be able to see, because you get to see so many, you can start to notice some more differences between them, such as like in the early season, they're often very white with spots that are less prominent, or green. They might be a bit green and a little smaller. And then in the late season, they have these prominent black markings. The males have just a single dot on that forewing, the front wing, where the females have two dots on that forewing, upper forewing. So it's pretty great. You can tell the difference between the sexes in your garden, and you might be able to notice their behavior as well. Are the females laying eggs? They probably are, or trying to. And are the males spiraling together, fighting and going upwards? Look out for that. An interesting note about the late season photo. I know it's late season because it's a bit smoky. I took this in September, maybe 5 years ago, in Portland when we were getting a lot of smoke up there. Very interesting study on the cabbage white and its movement through time, how it was introduced from Europe to North America and onwards. The color coding here are different. This is a genetic study, so each color here represents kind of a recognizable group subgroup of the cabbage white. So there's something different in each of these cabbage white populations genetically. You can see in the Pacific Northwest there is a pink color, and the rest of the United States is blue. This is pretty cool. In the paper, they found that we maybe actually have an isolated population here that was introduced in a different way than the cabbage whites that were introduced in Quebec and went across the eastern United States. So Our cabbage whites are a little different. Um, and then we are to blame, though, however, for sending our cabbage whites to Hawaii and New Zealand and then to Australia. One thing great to do in your yard is use a slow motion feature on your smartphone. Most have that these days, and you really get to see the motion of the wing, um, and it's really cool. I'm going to skip playing this video now for the sake of time, but perhaps we can do that as a bonus. Um, in general, if you catch a butterfly or you get close to it and you take a slow motion video, it's a great way to get to know them better. Here's one of my favorite concepts with butterflies is that can't have our cake and eat it too. Um, you know, amazing floppy butterflies flying around does not just happen. Um, they need um, they need things to eat and they need places to go. And in the case of the cabbage white, that's your kale. Um, there's quite a few caterpillars here on the right. You can pick most of them off. You can pick all of them off. Pick all the ones you see off. There's going to be some more somewhere. Um, but if you can sacrifice some kale, then you'll have butterflies. But the same goes for all butterflies in a larger picture. They need places to go. They need places that are not sprayed and not cut. They need undisturbed areas to spend the whole winter. They need to spend the whole winter as an egg or a chrysalis and not be messed with. And we have fewer and fewer of those. In the Willamette Valley, we had so many oak trees at one time, and oak trees are so cool. They host so many species. They are now, there are now many fewer oak trees, many fewer meadows. Meadows make great places to build things. They're nice and big and open and flat, but they're also what butterflies depend on. Here's one way you can make an undisturbed place in your yard. So you can do a little cleanup, but put your clippings in a pile. Someone coined the term the bug snug, where they made a triangle or pyramid shape and put their clippings under that. So you can compromise a bit and have a corner of a yard with a place that's left alone. But you can still have, you tell your neighbors that you cleaned up. Something so cool about butterflies is that they are here all year. They're hiding somewhere, like I said, as an egg or a pupa or an adult in rocks. And they have mechanisms for handling a freeze, which is just amazing. They can, they have a few strategies for being able to handle a freeze. Behavior to watch out for. Here is on the left, a female laying eggs. You can see the curved abdomen placing an egg. I watched this butterfly do that, and then I could look in there and I saw an actual egg on that plant. Um, on the right, patrolling, the Lorquin's admiral, which you're going to see this month probably, is um, great at patrolling. It'll perch on the edge of a branch, like in that top upper right photo, and then it'll be darting across the trail and making sure no other males are around and hoping maybe seeing a female. Um, and it glides. This one is an excellent glider. Somewhere floppy, this one glides. We've talked a bit about our relationship with butterflies. Some other points people talk about butterflies as pollinators. They certainly are. They're very different than how pollinators and than how bees are pollinators. Much less systematic, a bit more random and flighty. But that's cool because rather than honing in on one patch of lavender, going back and forth between the hive, butterflies are hopping around from one yard to the next, mixing the gene pool, which is really good in wild areas because you're getting more strength and resilience when you get that genetic diversity in our wild plants. I would say an even more prominent role that butterflies play than pollinating is converting plants to food. They are incredible herbivores. They um, like a lot of plants have chemical defenses like the milkweed that butterflies have managed to crack that code. They can eat milkweed, they can turn it into food for birds and lots of creatures. And something I think is important to mention is that they do have a spiritual function and a cultural function. And throughout history, we see basket weavings with butterflies. We see on hieroglyphics, and we show up in religion, and we use them as metaphors and symbols. Um, and sometimes I worry we use them more as a symbol that than we see more symbols than we see actual butterflies. Um, but I think this is a huge reason to keep them around and keep them in accessible places, ones where you don't have to drive 2 hours. Can we increase their habitat so you can see them within 20 minutes of your home? Every time I take someone on the trail, I see the healing function that they provide as people change the first time I take them out. Relationships with other species, food for songbirds. Songbirds eat seeds and other things, but when they're raising chicks, they are only eating caterpillars. And that's a lot of moths, a lot of mostly moth caterpillars probably, but also butterfly caterpillars. Um, Ants, they have an amazing relationship with ants, the blue butterflies, and also the hair streaks, the gray hair streak. Um, Larva is able to emit a chemical that ants tells an ant to take care of a larva, actually bring it into the ant hill and take care of it, maybe for 1 year, maybe for 2 years. That butterfly will be protected by ants and then emerge as a blue butterfly. Um, Plants, obviously, a lot of times butterflies have very specific relationships to certain plants. There's generalists and there's specialists. The specialists are particularly interesting because if you see that moth, you see that butterfly, you know there has to be that host plant around. I remember nectar plants are the flowers they drink as adults, they drink the nectar of as an adult. Host plants, those are the food plants the caterpillar eats. There are so much variation between species. Some can live for days, some live for months as an adult. The swallowtail, the Western tiger swallowtail, only has one generation in a year, but it can be really long living. And then as a larva, it's a whole nother story. This woolly bear caterpillar, which you may have encountered, especially around October, um, like it can live for so long, like 7 years. There's an Arctic woolly bear that they say lives at least 14 years on this NOAA article I read. And that's just insane. I think it's amazing. Um, so they wait, they are waiting for the right conditions, eggs and larvae. Um, they can wait out multiple winters, multiple dry summers, and then emerge when they think the conditions are right. Where to look? I mentioned some of this, but edges are, if you look in guidebooks and it talks about the habitat of a species and what they like, it almost all the descriptions say they like edges of some sort, forest edge, um, and it's true. So a road cut makes a great edge. It's also an accessible place for humans. If you follow a forest road into the forest and in the Cascades on a sunny day, that's where there's host plants around, maybe willows or oak trees. That's a really good place to look. It needs to be have some diversity and space. Here's another example. These pictures come from Butterflies of America. It's a website and it's a catalog of butterflies of the Americas. It's used by a lot of experts as a as a reference. They also have great habitat photos per species. Phenology is a way of talking about how plants and animals change throughout the year when they're blooming. In case of butterflies, when they're flying or when they're caterpillar. These charts come from iNaturalist. You can generate these based on an area. These are both for Oregon and for comparing two species. You can see the tiger swallowtail flying, peaking in June and July. And the gray hair streak has two generations, peaking in May and then later towards August. These are based on observations posted by citizen scientists and iNaturalist. And so the ones in guidebooks might vary, but it is a pretty cool tool that you can explore data yourself with. Also, there's a note at the bottom here, you can time travel. If you miss July and you don't see a swallowtail, you can go up in elevation. And the flowers that are done where you live in the river valley are probably just starting to bloom. So if you follow the blooms of the flowers and go up in elevation, you can go back in time and catch the species that you missed. Some other notes here about digital tools. I've talked a bunch about iNaturalist, eButterfly, also a really cool tool. One of the best um, image recognition tools is any butterfly for butterflies. iNaturalist has a general one that works for all types of life. But as you know, my guess, they have to compromise a bit when you do so many species. We have one focused just on butterflies. Checklisting is a type of recording data, a method of recording data where you visit a site and you visit it regularly and you record everything you saw, including things you didn't see. Um, you get to see at a site how things are changing over time. Checklisting zeros is one of my favorite activities now in the early spring or even winter, like when I'm down because I'm not seeing any butterflies, but I can still go do a survey and say I didn't see anything. And then next week, oh, still didn't see anything. Next week, didn't see anything. Oh, finally, it was the first week of April. We got a sunny day and I saw some California tortoiseshells come out. And then I can look back at my records and see when those first occurrences happened. With incidental observations, which is what iNaturalist is primarily focused on, you can't infer absence. And also you can't infer co-occurrence. So you can do a lot of science when you make a checklist and make these structured surveys. Wrapping up here, I have some quick slides. These are just links to homework for you. There are some upcoming field trips and butterfly counts. The two groups I follow the most are south of us in Eugene, the Lane Butterfly Group, and then in Washington, the Washington Butterfly Association. They have a great Zoom series of talks throughout the year. There's a BioBlitz coming up. If you from June 20th to July 20th, if you have to pick a date to look for butterflies, go during that date range and post everything you see on iNaturalist and eButterfly. And I really do encourage you to go on a field trip. That's when you get to learn to use a net. And some of you might have cameras with long lenses, but most of us do not. And it's also very tricky to photograph butterflies, even if you have a good camera. Having a net is a great way to see butterflies up close, pretty much the only way often to identify at the species level. You have to catch it. I catch it, I put it in a little jar, and then I transfer it to a viewing chamber like this, and it's really fun. You can show people that butterfly close up, and you'll get to see something more similar to what you see in the guidebook photos. Some printed resources. We have some great superstars in the Pacific Northwest, lepidopterists. There weren't always guidebooks, but since the 80s, there have been a number that sprung up, and there are more and more. These are three of my favorites, all very different. The one on the right is just cut and dry pocket guide with photos side by side of different species. The one in the middle is an older book, but it has really great more prose about each butterfly species, where the name came from. Robert Michael Pyle is a really awesome naturalist writer, so you get to see some of his writing come through in that book and learn. And some of the things that stick with me are those more anecdotal stories that book features. The one on the far left, Life Histories of Cascadia Butterflies. Really unique book, so cool. Every species in there. They have all the stages of caterpillar, what it eats, what it did over winter. And you can find that in the library.
Well, thank you, Michael. for your presentation today. We do have a few questions if you'd be willing to answer them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Our first one is, do monarchs come through Oregon?
Yes, yes. Um, I actually have never seen a monarch in Oregon myself. Um, but there are sightings of them recorded, absolutely, and there used to be a lot more. The monarchs the most famous resting site for monarchs is a place in Mexico, and those monarchs tend to end up in the Midwest and East Coast. Um, our monarchs that show up in Oregon actually come from California. There's also a small resting site, some eucalyptus trees in California, and those make their way up to Oregon. Um, and, um, and actually, yeah, Marion County has a fair number of monarch sightings. So um, um, it is possible, and hopefully, when those numbers will increase and not continue to decrease.
And next up, what are the best host plants to support Western swallowtails?
They are what swallowtails are cool. They're a bit generalists. Um, they like trees, um, or I say they're specific, but they eat a number of trees. Um, let's see. I might not be able to spit that off the top of my head, but I know poplar and cottonwood. Um, Cottonwood is definitely a favorite trees. So broadleaf trees is generally what the tiger swallowtail is going after. And for the specific list, I'll have to get back to you.
Next up is, let's see, how long do butterflies live?
It varies. Um, the tiger swallowtail, like I said, can live many months. Um, but some is just 1 week. That's as adult. That's as a flying adult. As a caterpillar or an egg, um, they can live for more weeks or months or years. So it really is amazing how it varies from species to species.
What are the techniques to make a proper bug snug?
Let's go back to that. You know, I think you can get creative, yeah, but the core component are those three poles tied at the top, and clippings. It's nice if you don't move them too much. If you make it earlier, like towards the end of the summer, then maybe things are not established in there yet. The closer you get to winter, the less you want to move things around because a chrysalis may have already formed. So that would be one technique I would say is be careful as you get closer to winter. You know, if you didn't do anything and you still want to like, clean up a little bit towards winter or the end of winter, maybe just kind of scoot the pile of things that are nearby each other into a pile um, versus like running it through a shredder or something first. But when clippings are still green and earlier on, you can probably get even more creative and pile things up in any way from all around your yard. Leaving it be, I mean, that is a good the lazy gardener is a friend of the butterfly.
That looks like it's all of our questions. So I just wanted to thank you again for joining us today and being willing to share your experiences and your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye all.